Welcome to Lesson 3. If you've been following along from the beginning, you've already taken 2 profound steps. In Lesson 1, you recognized that nothing you see means anything. In Lesson 2, you acknowledged that you gave everything you see all the meaning it has for you. And today, we're taking the next logical step, and it might be the most humbling one yet. Today's lesson is, I do not understand anything I see. And I want you to really let that sink in for a moment. Not, I don't understand some things, or I misunderstand certain things. No, you do not understand anything you see. Nothing, not one single thing. Your ego is probably already objecting. Wait, I understand plenty. I understand what a chair is. I understand what my hand is. I understand what's happening in my life. But that's exactly the problem. You think you understand. And that false certainty is what keeps you trapped in the ego's perception. Today we're going to dismantle that certainty completely. Let me read the lesson exactly as it appears in the workbook. I do not understand anything I see in this room. I do not understand anything I see in this street. I do not understand anything I see in this world. The exercise is similar to the previous lessons. You look around at whatever is near you and apply the idea to each thing you see, naming it specifically. I do not understand this chair. I do not understand this table. I do not understand this hand. I do not understand this door. The workbook suggests practicing this 3 or 4 times during the day for about 2 minutes each time. Move fairly rapidly through the objects around you, spending just a few seconds on each one. You're not trying to analyze why you don't understand. You're simply stating the fact. Now here's something crucial that the lesson emphasizes. You should not limit your practice to objects that seem difficult to understand. That's what your ego will want to do. Your ego will say, sure, I don't understand quantum physics or cosmic mysteries, but I certainly understand this table. No. Apply it to everything. Apply it especially to the things you're most certain about. The lesson also reminds you again not to apply this to anything that arouses strong feelings in you. We're still working with neutral objects, building the foundation. The highly charged things will come later when you're more prepared. Let's talk about what this lesson really means. When you say, I do not understand this chair, you're not saying you don't know what a chair is for or how to use it. You're saying something much deeper. You're saying that your entire comprehension of what that object is, what it means in the larger scheme of things, how it fits into reality, why it exists at all. All of that is based on perception, not understanding. Understanding, in the Course's terms, is something entirely different from what you usually call understanding. Real understanding would involve knowing something's true, purpose, its relationship to God, its place in the unified reality of creation. But you don't see any of that. You see separation. You see individual objects with functions you've assigned based on your body's needs and the ego's framework. Think about it this way. You understand a chair is for sitting. But why does sitting need to happen? Because you believe you have a body that gets tired. Why do you have a body? Because you believe you're separate from everything else and need a vehicle to interact with a separate world. Why are you separate? Because you believe you separated from God. And is any of that actually true? The Course says no. So your entire understanding of what a chair is built on false premises. This applies to everything you see. You think you understand what money is, what relationships are, what your body is, what other people are, what the world is. But all of that understanding is based on the ego's interpretation of reality, which is completely backwards. You're seeing everything through a lens of separation, judgment, past conditioning, fear, and desire. And then you call that understanding. The lesson is asking you to become humble enough to admit, I don't actually understand. I thought I did. I've been very confident in my understanding. But maybe, just maybe, I've been looking at everything completely wrong. Maybe what I call understanding is just the ego's interpretation masquerading as knowledge. This is such an important step because you cannot learn something new while you're convinced you already know it. As long as you believe you understand what things are, you won't be open to seeing them truly. You'll just keep confirming your existing beliefs. But when you admit, I don't understand, you create openness. You create the possibility for real vision to replace false perception. Now let's explore why this lesson is so fundamental to the course's teaching and how it connects to the larger framework of what we're learning. Because this isn't just about being humble or admitting ignorance. This is about recognizing the complete difference between perception and knowledge, between the ego's world and God's reality. The Course makes a crucial distinction that most spiritual teachings don't make clearly. It distinguishes between perception and knowledge, and it says these are completely different orders of reality. Knowledge is what God creates. It's direct, it's certain. It requires no interpretation, no learning, no proof. Knowledge simply is. It's the unified awareness of truth that has no opposite. But perception is what you made when you believed you separated from knowledge. Perception involves interpretation. It involves taking something unclear and trying to make sense of it through the filter of your beliefs, your past, your ego's needs. And here's the critical point. All perception is interpretation, and all interpretation is misunderstanding. You cannot perceive something and understand it at the same time. Why? Because if you're perceiving it, you're seeing it as separate from yourself. You're seeing it through the lens of a body's eyes, filtered through a brain that was programmed by the ego. You're not seeing what it actually is in God's reality. You're seeing your projection of what you believe it is. The text explains that you made perception to take the place of knowledge. When you believed you could separate from God, when you believed you could have private thoughts and individual identity, you lost direct knowledge of truth. And in its place, you constructed this elaborate system of perception where you try to understand things by observing them from outside, by categorizing them, by comparing them, by relating them to your past experiences. But none of that is real understanding. Real understanding would be knowing something as God knows it, as part of the unified whole, as an expression of love, as eternally safe and perfect. Instead, you see everything through the ego's lens. Separate objects, some good and some bad, some useful and some threatening, all existing in time and space and subject to change and decay. Let me give you an example. You look at a tree and you think you understand it. You know it's a living thing. You know it produces oxygen. You know its parts and functions. But do you really understand why it exists? Do you understand its relationship to the whole of creation? Do you understand its true purpose in God's plan? Do you understand what it actually is beyond your body's sensory interpretation of light waves and your brain's categorization system? No. You understand the ego's version of a tree. You understand the interpretation that allows you to navigate a world of separation. But you don't understand the tree as God created it, as part of the unified expression of love, as eternally connected to everything, including yourself. This applies to everything. You think you understand people, but you only see bodies with separate interests. You think you understand events, but you only see them through the lens of how they affect your ego's agenda. You think you understand yourself, but you only know the self-concept the ego constructed, not the self that God created. The reason this matters so much is that your false understanding is what keeps you imprisoned. As long as you believe you understand, you won't question your perceptions. You'll just keep reacting to your own projections as if they were reality. You'll keep suffering because of meanings you invented, and you'll never realize you could see differently. The Course is trying to break down this false certainty. It's saying you need to admit you don't understand anything before you can learn to see truly. You need to become like a child again, open and curious, willing to be taught, instead of an adult who thinks they've figured everything out. This is why these early lessons are so important. They're systematically dismantling your confidence in your perception. Nothing means anything. You gave everything its meaning. And now you don't understand anything. Each lesson strips away another layer of false certainty until you're finally open enough to receive true vision from the Holy Spirit. Let's make this concrete. How do you actually practice this lesson in a way that creates real transformation? How do you move from intellectual understanding to experiential recognition that you don't understand anything? Start with your formal practice periods. 3 or 4 times today, for 2 minutes each, stop what you're doing and look around. Apply the idea to everything you see. I do not understand this computer. I do not understand this wall. I do not understand this floor. I do not understand this body. Go through 10 or 15 objects quickly, stating the fact for each one. But here's where it gets powerful. Throughout the day, catch yourself when you think you understand something. This is the real practice. When you're going about your normal activities and you encounter anything, a situation, a person, an object, an emotion, notice when you automatically assume you understand it. And then remind yourself, I do not understand this. Let me give you real examples. You're having a conversation with someone, and they say something that annoys you. Your immediate thought is, I understand what they're doing. They're being passive-aggressive. They're trying to manipulate me. They're being insensitive. Stop. I do not understand this person. I do not understand what they're really communicating. I do not understand the full context of why they said what they said. This doesn't mean you become naive or let people walk over you. It means you stop being so certain that your first interpretation is correct. You create space for the possibility that there's more going on than your ego's immediate judgment. Another example. You check your bank account and see a number that makes you anxious. You think, I understand what this means. I don't have enough money. I'm failing financially. I should be worried. Stop. I do not understand this number. I do not understand what it really means about my security or my worth. I do not understand how this fits into the bigger picture. Or, you look in the mirror and see your body looking tired or aged. You think, I understand what's happening. I'm getting old. I'm losing my vitality. Time is running out. Stop. I do not understand this body. I do not understand what I'm actually seeing. I do not understand the meaning of time or aging. The key is to apply this, especially to things you're most certain about. Your ego will resist this. It wants you to be certain because certainty gives it power. When you're certain about what things mean, you react automatically. You don't question. You just keep playing out the same patterns. But when you admit, I don't understand, everything changes. You become teachable. You become open. You create the possibility for the Holy Spirit to show you a different way of seeing. Here's a practical technique. When you notice yourself getting emotionally triggered by something, pause and ask yourself, what am I so certain I understand about this situation that's causing my reaction? Usually you'll find you've made a whole series of assumptions. You understand what the other person meant. You understand what this event means for your future. You understand what this says about you. And all of those understandings are just interpretations based on fear. Then say, I do not understand this. I thought I did, but I don't. And I'm willing to see it differently. This is incredibly freeing, because once you admit you don't understand, you're no longer trapped in your interpretation. You can ask for help. You can invite the Holy Spirit to show you what's really happening. What happens when you actually practice this lesson consistently? What shifts begin to occur in your awareness? Let's talk about the common experiences people have and what they reveal. The first thing most people notice is how much they've been pretending to understand. You go through life with this confident demeanor, acting like you know what's going on, like you've got it figured out. But when you start applying this lesson, you realize how much of that confidence is just a facade. Underneath, there's uncertainty, confusion, fear. You've just been covering it up with the appearance of understanding. And there's something deeply relieving about admitting this. It's exhausting to pretend you understand when you don't. It's exhausting to maintain the illusion of certainty. When you finally admit, I don't understand, there's a release of pressure. You don't have to have all the answers anymore. You don't have to defend your interpretations anymore. You can just be honest. I don't know. Many people also experience a kind of disorientation when practicing this lesson. If you don't understand anything, then what do you stand on? What's your foundation? This disorientation is actually healthy. The ego's certainty was a false foundation. It was quicksand pretending to be solid ground. Real ground comes from truth, not from the ego's interpretations. So this shaking of false certainty is necessary. Some people find this lesson liberating. They've been carrying the burden of trying to figure everything out, trying to understand why things happen, trying to make sense of a world that often doesn't make sense. This lesson says, stop trying. You can't understand it through the ego's framework because the ego's framework is fundamentally backwards. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to understand, just admit you don't and ask for help from something that does. Others find the lesson humbling. The ego doesn't like admitting it doesn't understand. The ego wants to be the expert, the authority, the one who knows. When you say, I don't understand, you're deflating the ego's grandiosity. You're admitting you need guidance, you need teaching, you need a vision beyond your own. This humility is essential for spiritual growth. One student shared that they were in a heated argument when they remembered Lesson 3. They were so certain they understood what the other person was doing wrong, so convinced of their own rightness. But then they paused and thought, I do not understand this person. I do not understand this situation. And in that moment, all their certainty crumbled. They realized they had been arguing with their own projection, not with the actual person in front of them. This opened up the possibility for real communication. Another student said they were paralyzed by a major life decision. They kept trying to understand which choice was right, analyzing every angle, but the more they tried to understand, the more confused they became. Then they applied Lesson 3. I do not understand this situation. I do not understand which path to take. And When they stopped trying to understand through the ego, they became open to guidance from the Holy Spirit. The answer came not through analysis, but through a quiet knowing that had nothing to do with ego understanding. This lesson also helps you recognize projection. When you think you understand someone, especially when you're judging them, you're almost certainly projecting. You're seeing your own guilt, your own fear, your own unresolved issues reflected back to you. When you admit, I don't understand this person, you stop the projection. You create space to actually see them instead of seeing your own darkness. So here we are at Lesson 3, and you're beginning to see the pattern of these early lessons. They're systematically undoing your confidence in ego perception. Nothing means anything. You gave everything its meaning, and you don't understand anything. Each lesson strips away the false certainty that keeps you trapped in suffering. And here's what's beautiful. By admitting you don't understand, you're finally in a position to learn. You can't teach someone who thinks they already know everything. But when you become humble enough to say, I don't understand, you become teachable. You become open to receiving vision from the Holy Spirit, who does understand, who sees truly, who knows reality as it actually is. This is just day 3. We have 362 more lessons ahead of us. And each one is going to deepen your willingness to question perception, to release false understanding, to open to truth. We're building a foundation here that will support everything that comes later. Your practice today is simple but profound. Admit you don't understand. Apply it to everything, especially the things you're most certain about. When you catch yourself thinking, I know what this means, or I understand what's happening, pause and say, actually, I don't understand, and I'm willing to be shown. If this lesson is resonating with you, if you're experiencing these shifts, please like this video, not for me, but for yourself. It's an affirmation that you're choosing truth over the ego's false certainty. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're doing all 365 lessons together, one day at a time. This is a journey of undoing everything you thought you knew and opening to what's real. Don't take it alone. Share this with someone who's struggling because they think they have to figure everything out on their own. Someone who's exhausted from trying to understand. Someone who needs permission to admit, I don't know, and that's okay. And comment below, what are you most certain you understand that maybe you're willing to question? Where in your life could admitting I don't understand create an opening for something new? Thank you for your humility. Thank you for your willingness to not know. Thank you for choosing truth over the comfort of false certainty. I'll see you tomorrow for Lesson 4. Until then, remember, you don't understand anything. You see through the ego's eyes. But the Holy Spirit is ready to show you true vision the moment you're willing to admit you need it.